Happy Friday. Hello to those of you who are new and welcome to our channel. And for those who are returning, welcome to another episode of Murders, Mysteries, and More. My name is Kaylee.
My name is Desi.
Be sure to like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell next to the subscribe button to turn on post notifications. Before we get into this case, we always encourage those who have useful information to any unsolved case, please report it to your local police and sheriff department.
Today, we are jumping right back into another missing 411 case about Bart Schleyer. For those who haven't heard of the 411 cases, they cover missing persons who vanish on public, rural, or national parks. Their disappearances are not related to mental illness, and oddly enough, a storm almost always happens after they vanish.
Who is Bart? Bart's father is Dr. Otis Schyler. His mother is Lula Rose. He was born in Cheyenne, Wyoming in 1955. At a very young age, his father took him hunting. His sister is named Claudia, and she describes his love for animals. She says, quote unquote, "He didn't just like them. He wanted to know everything about them, study where they lived and how they lived. My dad took Bart with him on a safari to Mozambique when he was 10 years old. He had a chance to witness an incredible variety of animals that he could otherwise only read about. When he finally got a chance to hunt, he was drawn even closer. Hunting seemed to give purpose to his studies." End quote.
Bart's personality was, he had a really good sense of humor, would tell practical jokes, send postcards, and funny pictures to people. Bart was always prepared for his trips, and one time he brought along a clown costume. He always brought along his cat named Sparky. However, his cat was taxidermied, not alive, which is oddly disturbing, but you'd be surprised how many people do it, even strange animals such as deer.
That is kind of strange, but some people, that's their way of life.
But he was a very genuine, humble person.
A little bit about Bart's education. He studied wildlife biology, then he transferred to Montana State University where he obtained his master's in 1979. Don Collins, his professor, says, quote unquote, "Out of the 42,000 students who took that class, Bart was a standout," end quote. He studied the pattern of grizzlies in Yellowstone Park as a part of his thesis statement. He even used telemetry radio collars on bears to study their activity. After college, he stayed in Montana and he was a part of wildlife, fish, and game and the interagency Grizzly Bears study team. Some contributions that Bart had made is he helped discover how bears would react after human interactions. This would be very helpful for human safety.
He studied habitat requirements and birth and mortality rates of the bears, and he worked for the Grizzly Bear Recovery Project in Yellowstone National Park in the 1980s. He eventually moved to Alaska and did spend a couple months in Russia studying Siberian Tigers. He captured, used radio collars, and tracked the tigers since they were endangered species. And this is where he met his Russian girlfriend, Tanya Perova, there, and they had a son called Artyom. He spent months out in the woods studying these animals.
Bart's hunting experience. So Bart grew up hunting with guns until his older sister had a boyfriend named Jim who introduced him to bow hunting. He learned how to use a recurve bow. If you guys don't know what a recurve bow is, it's a mix between a full-size longbow and a small composite bow. It's super easy to use. At one point they did try compound bows, but Jim aimed at an elk, the bow snapped, which caused him to obtain lacerations on his hands and ribs, which is very painful. People called Bart the animal whisperer. He was able to survive on limited supplies and did many difficult hunts. In January of 1983, Paul, one of Bart's hunting buddies, died in a skiing accident. And about 2 years later, in 1995, another hunting buddy of his named Jeff was on a plane that crashed and he died.
So the trip itself, it occurred on September 14, 2004, and a float plane dropped him off in Reid Lake in Canada's Yukon territory. So the geography of that place is part of the southern slope of Stillwin Mountains. It is 175 miles north of a town known as White Horse, where Bart lived. The most nearby settlement is Stewart Crossing, which is approximately 15 miles from the lake. So the equipment that he brought on was 3 giant cooler crates of food containing at least enough food for 2 weeks. They had 2 weeks worth of clothing, 10 sleeping bag, bows, and an inflatable boat. The plan was to only stay there for 2 weeks and be picked up on September 27, 2004. The temperature around this time was 50 degrees Fahrenheit, a high of 63 and a low of 39 with clear skies.
When he got there, he set up a tent, he ate a meal, and inflated a boat. This is the only information that has been provided for this trip. When the pilot returned on September 27th, Bart was gone. However, his gear was still there. The pilot reported him as missing and the search began. Royal Canadian Mounted Police sent 6 men to search for him, who arrived on September 29th. They found his boat, but no evidence of him there. The police left earlier, and the reason why they decided to leave is they blamed the weather, except for if you check the weather records at the time, they show that the skies were clear.
Yeah, so because of this, one of Bart's friends, whose name was Williams, called a pilot buddy, who this guy's name was Wayne Curry, and they made a trip to Reid Lakes on October 1st. They saw his tent had been knocked down and found his backpack, knife, aircraft radio, and bear spray. The next day, on October 2nd, they investigated the boat and found that it was 60 yards away and found his bow, quiver of arrows, a dry bag next to a thicket of spruce and willow trees. It was a perfect place to hunt, and they found a camo face mask with blood and hair on it, so they contacted the RCMP.
So the White Horse Daily Star News did not have the correct dates for this incident. However, the Anchorage Daily News did have the correct dates for their report. The White Horse residents questioned RMCP for doing the aerial search because this was in one of the most wooded areas. They also did not like how the police handled the search. They felt like they should have done a ground search, and they thought the reason why that they didn't do a ground search was because it was cost related. And then the RMCP coincidentally started searching again on October 3rd, one day after Bart's friends found evidence. And they basically had mountaineers, conservation officers, and volunteers who found wolf and bear scat.
Now, theory number 1 for this is that it could have been a surprise bear attack. There was a baseball cap found near the bows and arrows. There was torn camo pants found and a camera nearby on a bed of moss. They did find remains. It was a partial skull fragment and a few bones, and they were able to match general records with Bart, but no clothes were found in scat samples. Grizzly bears typically eat clothing of victims. This was not the case with Bart if eaten by a bear. Bart's crates of food were completely left alone, which is not typical because grizzly bears do go through and they scout and go through all that stuff at camp, so it would have all been gone. Grizzlies are also roughly 5 to 8 feet tall, weigh around 800 pounds, and could easily overpower a human, and can run up to 45 miles per hour top speeds. Could have taken a bath, hence why no clothes found in scat samples. The bear could have also came up from behind him and then ate him. But I feel like, they would have found more evidence pointing towards that.
For sure, yeah. It is weird how that they found the food was undisturbed.
Yeah, not just that, but also I'm sure they would have found
signs of struggle. They would have found more blood.
Signs of struggle, also bear tracks. Trail of blood. Anything.
Theory number 2 is natural causes, and after he died of natural causes, animals ate him. He was 49 years old at the time. The average age for the first heart attack is 65 years old, so that's not too far off of that age. And then men have an increased risk 10 years before females. Although at the time the weather was mild, hypothermia can occur for weather above 40 degrees, and the Canadian weather at the time could dip down to a low 26 degrees. We also do not know if Bart had any underlying health conditions. Since there was no evidence of struggle, it would be a more plausible explanation that he died of natural causes. After he passed, animals could have scavenged his body, or he could have been even murdered. Who knows? Maybe Sasquatch killed him.
Very true. Going into Reddit comments to actually contribute to theory number 2, Dita Lil Poo, wow, said, in the last 2 months, I've met 2 men in their 40s that have had pulmonary embolisms, and who would have passed if not for swift medical intervention. Both men were fit and healthy and are on track to getting fit again. P.S. I'm their trainer. Barto5 says that people in supposedly peak physical condition do drop dead unexpectedly. I mean, yeah, it happens. Like, anything can happen, like heart attack, stroke. You could be completely healthy.
Never know.
No. Also, this Reddit user, which is Leah Land, says this seems pretty cut and dried. Maybe a moose killed him and then it buried the remains. I live in Alaska. Moose are way more likely to kill you than bears, but no reason a bear wouldn't take what remains if they could. Or he died in an accident or natural causes and was then eaten. Foul play seems like such a stretch when there's so much else in the bush that could kill you, which is very true.
That's true. Well, and also, like, moose are evil and they can trample people. Definitely don't want to get in a wreck with one.
No. Suspicious Welcome To says, I feel like we shouldn't be ruling out the possibility of a cryptid or unknown native intelligent creature killing him. Somebody else, whose name is SeaLive764, might have been a Wendigo. They live in Canada and are way smarter than humans. I mean, yeah. Wendigos are crazy, though.
Here's a really interesting comment. So, Artem1995 says, what if he was attacked by a bear in the water? Haven't given this idea a ton of thought, but I heard this story and live in Alaska and was thinking maybe a bear stalked him and snuck up on him when Bart was going for a swim to possibly bathe. Makes sense why some of his clothes were found with no blood or sign of attack on them, and his pack being found with the arrows gently lying up against a tree. Definitely feel like if a bear did attack him, that's definitely a way that the bear would have.
Yep. Darkling Dread said, cougar can drop down out of trees and kill cleanly with a bite to the back of the neck. They also can do take kills up in trees. This all said the thing that stuck out to me was they found bones and teeth after only a few weeks. That seemed awfully fast to me. On body farms, it takes 18 months in the open air for a body to go down to a dry skeleton. So whether it was a bear or a coyote or wolf or cougar, something clearly ate him. And if it wasn't one of those, well, or we are dealing with a time anomaly.
Yeah, I could see that a cougar possibly. Those things are evil.
I mean, yeah, they are. They're very vicious, for sure.
And they definitely hunt in packs, usually.
And also, Tiny Dancer 97, my only thoughts are, 1, the blood could either be from shaving, or 2, he planted it on there because I think he faked his own death. Why else would an experienced hunter go somewhere that isn't good for hunting? Because less locals would be there to witness him staging everything and less tourists in the cold.
Yeah, that is possible.
Yeah, I mean, but also it doesn't explain why they identified the teeth and bones as his.
Low Molasses 446 says the autopsy of the skull proved it wasn't a bear attack. His dinner was still sitting there uneaten. Even the trunks were untouched, and the bears can definitely sell them for a 2-mile distance. I think it was some natural cause. That is definitely an important point to prove right there. Bart was a man just like Steve Irwin who had useful contributions to wildlife and conservation. Unfortunately, due to the severe lack of evidence and the piss-poor search drive of the RMCP, we do not know exactly what happened to him. Maybe a bear surprise attacked him, he had a heart attack, or even a moose trampled him. All we hope is to shed light on the 411 cases.
Like always, thank you for listening to another episode of Murders and a Strain of More. Remember, always keep your eyes open because you never know when a grizzly bear is going to get you.